would you consider to be evidence for you of the existence of God?
We've had that one a couple times. I have a hard time answering that because I'm not sure. There are evidence of God. One, I would like to see some form of actual physical evidence in the sense of, I'm into astronomy.
A fingerprint.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm into astronomy. If all the stars all of a sudden one night form themselves together to say, hello, stupid people, I exist, that would be somewhat compelling. If it was verifiable and everybody around the world saw the same kind of things, and it wasn't just some weird thing in my head that I saw.
Yeah, but couldn't that just be a delusion?
It could be, yes. And so that's why, in addition to that, I would like to have a lot of the questions that I have answered. We'll go with the Bible as being, let's say that's the God that came forward and said, yes, I'm the one. I'd want to know the story of the flood. Is that true?
Yeah, but even that, the Bible might be just complete, just one thing. It may not even be even remotely close to what God is all about.
Yeah, and so, again, I'd want to know more about this God, because if he did show himself in some way, what is the difference, I assume, between a God and some really advanced alien species that can do this kind of stuff? Is a God, what makes me think that I should get down and just worship this being? Well, I don't see any logical reason why any self-respecting person should worship any other being.
I agree with you there, but I do think that those are two different issues.
Okay.
They are.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking that I don't think that there could be an objective test for the existence of God, because there's always, however remote, a possibility that is just, a more advanced civilization that is just manipulating us somehow.
Yeah.
But again, you're asking the difference between knowing that there's a God and believing that there's a God. Here's the thing. A lot of people call into the show and they ask us, what's the difference between being an agnostic and being an atheist? Quite frankly, I believe that the majority of the human beings on the planet are either agnostic atheists or agnostic theists, because being agnostic, Gnostic is, I guess, the Latin word for no, and being agnostic means you don't know. You don't know, but you believe that there's a God. You don't know, but you believe that there is no God. In order for me to believe that there was a God, I agree, there'd have to be some kind of physical evidence. God, write your name in the sky, or God, make the sea split in half in front of me. All these people in the Bible that claim that they were God-fearing, God-loving, God servants of God people in the Bible, the Bible doesn't have anybody working on faith. They have people working on the fact that the Red Sea parted in half, that their staff turned into a snake and the rivers turned to blood. If we saw any of that stuff happening today, I might be a little bit more inclined to believe that there was a God out there. But right now, I don't see that.
Excuse me. I have a problem with that. I just think that the argument is a non-starter, and unfortunately, I hear that argument from y'all a lot. That we need an evidence of a God. My opinion is that there can never be sufficient evidence, because there's always the remote possibility. So
well, there's always a remote possibility.
Myself, by the way,
I understand your point that there's a remote possibility, and there will always be people who latch onto that and say it can't be true. It can't be true. Holocaust deniers. There's a lot of evidence out there that the Holocaust actually happened, but there's a few people out there who say, yeah, well, those are fake pictures, and that was all Hollywood, and it wasn't really that many people. Let's get serious here.
Well,
so there are people who deny that. Just like if all of a sudden we were living in Old Testament times where God was constantly at works doing something or other in the world, then again, if I saw a lot of evidence pointing in the direction that a God must exist, then okay, God must exist. Now, is that perfect 100% proof? No. Do I have perfect 100% proof that Japan exists? No. Pretty good evidence. But it's not.
Again,
but it's not
the difference
definite.
between being an agnostic theist and a gnostic theist. If I walked across a bush that was burning but wasn't being consumed, I would probably believe in God. I wouldn't try and prove to anybody that I knew for a fact beyond a doubt that there was a God, but I would probably start telling people that I believe in God. Because I happened to walk across a bush that was burning and wasn't being revealed. Why did God used to reveal himself to people all the time and now he doesn't anymore? What changed?
Well, yeah, but I was just approaching this from a different perspective, and all I'm saying is I think that, at least where I'm concerned, my foundation for atheism doesn't involve evidence at all. It involves more non-believing of whatever people are putting out, as their faith. I can't believe in certain things, but that doesn't mean that that God doesn't exist, whatever. Anyway, I was just commenting on sort of like the foundations of atheism and the fact that for me at least, it doesn't rest on the foundation of the existence or non-existence of evidence. It just exists that I'm just not willing to accept, just whatever people say, is evidence.
Yeah.
As like you're saying, whether it be Christian or Muslim or Jewish or whatever it is, Greek.
And you can typically go after,
Egyptian.
and you can go after religions and theistic beliefs in lots and lots of different ways. Again, the problem of evil is a direct, I don't want to call it attack, but it's a line of thinking that says, look, this God that you have set down before us, that cannot exist because of these reasons here.
Oh,
I can say that, look, again, let's stick with the Bible just because we know that one. There are a lot of stories in the Bible that God cannot be a good person. That God cannot be a moral being because of all these different stories, the lack of reasons for, killing everybody in the world, that type of thing. I can, if you want to argue things like that, then I can do that.
Yeah.
If you would just want to say, look, there's just, God's everywhere. Well, no, he's not. Give me some evidence that he exists.
Right. I mean, I've had a lot of people,
you can go a lot of
they
different
try
ways.
so hard to prove to you that God exists that they will change the definition until you can't deny that doesn't exist. So a lot of people will say to me, you see that tree over there? That's God. Can you deny that tree exists? I'm like, no, but I have no reason to believe that tree is God.
All I'm saying is
call it a tree.
All I'm saying is I think that as atheists we have to be careful of saying that we need evidence, because in my opinion, and I'm not a philosopher, but in my opinion, we can never have evidence because there's always the remote possibility. So I think that all I'm saying is I think that we need to rest our foundation of atheism on other pillars rather than just that. And that's all I'm saying.
Well, there are a lot of things out there, but is that not going back to what some other callers called closed-minded?
Yeah.
How much evidence do you need, that God exists or doesn't exist or whatever?
All I'm saying is from a rational point of view, there can be no evidence because there's always a possibility that it's just us being, our mind is being manipulated. So it's a non-starter argument.
But then again, it's it could be your mind's being manipulated into believing that the Holocaust and World War II existed. Were you actually there?
The world exists.
Yeah, I mean,
the Twin Towers ever existed.
Yeah, who says that we're not living in the Matrix? It's a possibility, a pretty slim one, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's kind of remote,
Yeah. So if God were coming down and every single day he was doing some kind of miraculous event around the world,
yeah, but
then
there's a big
wouldn't that be
between
a lot of evidence that he exists? There's still room for doubt, but it's kind of getting into the realm of being ridiculous to doubt it.
Well, I see your point to an extent, but I think there's a big difference between the creator or creators of the entire universe and the Holocaust, however horrible it may be.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's definitely a difference. But again, just going back to the fact of God's existence, again, if we had miracles every single day around the world, and there was no explanation that anybody could come up with for any of these except for God, and God was out there, trumpeting his voice and talking to people and being very open and, coming down and doing, coming on Jerry Springer or whatever, that would be good evidence. And so that's something where you'd start saying, well, it's starting to make more sense to believe than not believe.
Yeah,
he couldn't do that because then it would take away the mysticism of the whole thing, and then we'd have no reason to worship him anymore.
Yeah, but I think that I bet you everybody wouldn't even agree with that. The believers wouldn't even agree with it.
Oh, I'm positive of that. Yeah, I'm positive.
Anyway.
They make movies about that, like the movie Stigmata. I mean, my favorite thing about those religiously ironic movies is that it's always the atheist that becomes the believer, and it's always like the Pope or you know, the Vatican that denies that any of this stuff is going on and refuses to believe it and does everything they can to cover it up.
Exactly.
I love that. I think that's just brilliant with irony.
I like how every time you get a news story out there saying somebody survived this disaster, or they won the lottery, or you know, they found their grandmother's wedding ring, you know, grown inside a potato or something like that. They say, "My God, you know, this was God that did this. God has blessed me," or something like that. And everybody's like, "Yeah, that's an amazing story, and thank God for you." But then as soon as God does something a little bit weird and says, "Kill your kids," or you know, go run into the hills of Nevada and you know, throw away all your money, that person's just nuts.
Right.
That wasn't God. So you know, it's always kind of weird that if it's good, God had a hand in that. If it's bad, God can't do that. You're just nuts.
What's that movie that Jeff had us all see, where this guy believes he's on a mission from God to kill all the demons?
I want to say Memento for some reason, but I know that's not it. Frailty.
Frailty. Oh, see, Frailty.
That's a good movie.
That's a good movie.
Okay, I'll have to look at
That makes
it.
you think. I mean, some of these movies that make you think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Stigmata. I mean, The Matrix, Frailty. I mean, these movies they just really make you think about religion.
Now, what if this were true?
Yeah.
What kind of implications would that have?